Steve Beyer, you're the author of the book Singing to the Plants.
Right.
And the subtitle's like a guide to
mestizo shamanism in the upper Amazon.
So what I liked about that book is that you've been down there, you've trained with the curanderos, you've done sort of an apprenticeship or gone deep with the medicine,
right.
But you also have the Western understanding to separate the dogma from the indigenous, you know, from the true facts, and how to bring that back to the Western mind frame. I say you do, right? So okay, I'll bring you a question form.
Is that
how do we separate then? You know, how do we respectfully integrate the indigenous perspective with the Western perspective?
I'm not sure we can. I think there are significant differences between the cosmos that we live in and what I call the tragic cosmovision of the upper Amazon. Just as, for example, there is no clear bright line between the shaman and the sorcerer, because both have the knowledge and the tools to both heal and kill. There is not a bright line in the upper Amazon between predation and renewal, life and death, good and evil, healing and harming. They are both opposite and complementary principles. Out of death comes life. The price you pay for life is death. Predation, the great predators, the jaguar, kills, but it's out of death that new life comes. And among many of the indigenous traditions in the upper Amazon, it is impossible to heal one person without harming another, because the dart, the pathogenic projectile that makes somebody sick, which is sucked out by the mouth of the shaman, has to go somewhere. And if you leave it on the ground, somebody can trip over it and become sick. Among the Yaga, they project the dart over the horizon where it falls into the land of the people with no anus, who live underground. And they are made sick by this dart which the shaman extracted, and in revenge they throw clods of earth up onto the ground that children choke on. So there is, in the upper Amazon, this lack of clear distinctions. There is a concept that opposite and complementary work together, and the kinds of bright lines that we have between healing and harming, predator and prey, are just not operative. And I have seen very few Westerners who have the slightest interest in learning about these Amazonian concepts. They want to go down and apply our own notions of sickness and healing.
It seems like, from what you're saying there, it's like the Western integration of it is a diluted form.
I think it is. I think it's very different. I think, for example, there's been a lot of discussion at this conference about what we owe the sacred plants. There is a real tendency among foreigners to the upper Amazon to see the sacred plants not as autonomous others, not as persons with whom you need to be in right relationship, but as simply medicines that you take that work somehow without your needing to put any of your own effort into it. Basic to the worldview in the upper Amazon is this notion of reciprocity and mutuality. And when mutuality fails, when there is a lack of reciprocity, when there is a lack of generosity, when there is a lack of sharing, the result is envy, resentment, jealousy, anger, and it is from this social disruption that disease comes. There is the idea in the upper Amazon that all disease is an indictment of a social failure, a failure of right relationship. And it's because of this failure of right relationship that somebody is moved by envy and jealousy and resentment and anger to project this pathogenic projectile into the body of another person, which the shaman then sucks out. All sickness in the upper Amazon is a sign of a failed social relationship. And we just don't have that concept at all.
I guess that brings up my next question, is that then if ayahuasca becomes a medicine in the medical fold in the West, and there's that narrow bandwidth of its usage, from the indigenous perspective, there's an equal and opposite and a wider context. Will that create, you think, some dis-ease in itself?
I think that's right. I think there are social issues involved here as well. One of the things that troubles me that you see at conferences like this that needs discussion is the medicalization of the sacred plants. We see the sacred plants being reduced to convenient collocations of molecules rather than as healing persons who require a mutual relationship. Are we trading one oppressive regime for another? Are we trading the DEA for the FDA? Are we trading a situation where people who want to use the sacred plants, say in North America, hide in their basement because of an oppressive government? Are we going to trade that for a situation where the only people who are allowed to administer the sacred plants are state-certified practitioners in white coats in sterile corridors?
Government shamans.
Government shamans, exactly.
Yeah.
And I think we need to be very careful when we think about the medicalization of the sacred plants. And we call them medicine. And we think we're being all indigenous because, you know, they're called medicines in many indigenous languages. But what we mean by medicine is not necessarily the same thing as a mestizo shaman means when he says la medicina. But we think we're saying the same thing, and then we start thinking of them as simply being a medicine which we owe no obligations to. There is no sense of reciprocity, mutuality. You can't be generous back to a medicine. You can only be generous back to a sacred person or a sacred plant.
Do you think the spirit in the plant then, and in many of the psychoactive plants in the indigenous sense have spirits, they believe, do you think that even if we dilute our relationship with it, that the medicine itself might engender an awareness of spirit?
I have no idea. I don't know. I am constantly amazed at the tricks that spirits play. You know, we can think about these things, but the spirits have their own plans for us. And I have no idea what those are, because every time I think I know what the spirits plan for me, they come up with something else.